When I joined SeatGeek, I remember that I wanted so much to see an example of an entire API transformation journey. I wanted to see something that could give me more than pointers. I wanted to see something that could give me more than inspiration to bootstrap my efforts. I've searched, and while I could get little glimpses here and there, it was very hard for me to find something prescriptive. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot of literature on the topic, perhaps even too much. I read a lot of it, and I watched many sneak peeks, but the prescriptive guidance on how to get there to help me see that I was going the right way, that I couldn't find. So my goal today is to show you just that, a story of our journey and what I've seen, to give you the structural insights that I could not find back then. And this is where we start. This is the SeatGeek API story in numbers at the start of last year. SeatGeek was founded in 2009, and since then, both business growth and acquisitions left us with a diverse and sprawling API landscape. Although we had some localized telemetry in place, it was sometimes hard to reason across all of these APIs in a reliable way, and also difficult to assess whether customers were having success with these APIs. Well, to be honest, not really. We did have a pretty good idea about it. With different documentations and many PDFs, we found that it was hard for customers to learn how to use our APIs. And wherever you have customer friction, you are sure to have consequences. And we definitely felt many of them. When you have a difficult-to-use API, you don't get many integration partners investing the effort to work with you. You also end up with different ways of doing this very same thing, and you are forced to come up with brittle solutions in order to help your customers. But it was not only customers who had it bad with our APIs. Our teams also felt a lot of this pain. With these different styles of APIs, it's been difficult to provide good tooling for them to use. I remember when we started engaging with our teams, and I discussed our initial insights within the API experience group. I think the most shocking highlight was the feedback that many of our teams, they were actively avoiding, exploring, developing new APIs. It was so complex to understand what was around. It was also very hard to start creating something new. And this made them prefer to compose flows at the front end or extend existing APIs way beyond their initial scope. And not only that, all these quality of service controls you need, throttling, rate limiting, caching, or functions such as authentication and authorization, our teams all carried the burden to implement these functions by themselves. They had to redo the same thing over and over again that had nothing to do with the requirements that they needed to deliver. And when things get bad enough, it's difficult for any team to find the time to make things better. It is difficult to find the motivation to make things better. It's just easier to maintain the current state of affairs. And this is not good. But this was something people managed to live with for a long time. So why change it? That is actually something simple to answer. And it all goes back to our mission. We want to help people experience more live. And our system was simply letting us down in this mission. We're always looking to bring more to our fans. More games, more plays, more concerts, but in a nutshell, more experiences. The rich experiences we offer, such as the one with Rally, allowing fans to order transportation and even food to enhance what would be a simple night out to see their favorite team win or lose. This is all built through APIs and integrations. We're always striving to offer more to our fans. The more we do it, the more trust we gain for enterprise customers. The more they trust us, the more inventory we have to sell. The more inventory you have to sell, higher is the number of fans seeking more experiences through SeatGeek. The more fans we have, the more events we have to offer them. It is a flywheel effect, and we want this flywheel to just keep spinning faster and faster. So we decided to take action. We reasoned that it would be a big burden to put on the owners of the APIs, the task to make the overarching narrative fundamentally better. We decided to build a dedicated team looking after the API experience. And we started by hiring a director-level person to be in charge of this team, which so happens to be me, and I am the one telling you the story today. And I quickly found out that there would be no quick solution. It was going to be a journey. And it's easier to embark into a journey when you have at least a rough idea of how it will look like. So we sketched a model composed by 4 stages. And it starts with discovery. An API journey is not about technology. An API journey is about people. Do you remember in the beginning who was feeling the pain? So we talked to them, and you should too. Do what they do. See what they see. Miss what they are missing. Your quick win at this point will be an attempt to win over internal teams to engage with you. This may be a critical step in securing funding for this work, but it certainly is a critical step to ensure that you're building what's really needed. And our quick win was telemetry. As I mentioned before, we had some disparate telemetry, and it was difficult for our teams to reason about many of our APIs. How were they used? Were the integrations successful? How responsive were they? These are all very hard to say. Without answering all of these questions, we were able to stand up a single pane of glass, gathering many important metrics for our teams, so they could reason about them with us. And we're able to create this only by tweaking and building over what we had. We did not need to get anything net new, any new tool, anything else to achieve this win. And the benefits, those were immediate. For example, I remember one of the first discussions I was involved in. One of our integrators raised different timeout issues from time to time that neither our support nor application teams could spot. These issues always went away by themselves, only to resurface later. But the API integrator, the API they called, never presented any problem. We could confirm with the telemetry that the API in question was indeed working fine. But we could also confirm, thanks to the telemetry, that the integrator was actually calling another API. And this one did indeed time out when it was being asked to return way too much data. This finding was enough for our teams to engage with the integrator and get to a satisfactory resolution in a very short time frame. So back to the journey. The next step you have is establishing a foundation. We defined a bold vision for a new API landscape, for a new API experience, but we needed a strong foundation to make it come through. This is what we work on next, building this foundation of technical tooling, of processes, of standards, and support to uplift our teams in delivering this vision to our customers. So we took what we found during our previous stage, that is a solid understanding of which were the main gaps in your landscape and how developers and customers, they expected to use our APIs. And with that, we started to look into what was the right thing for us in different levels. We decided to move away from bespoke authentication mechanisms and onto an OAuth 2 system, similar to the one used for our consumer marketplace. We also knew that adopting a single way to authenticate would make it easier for customers to integrate with our systems. We knew that this would enable us to offer customers self-service functions such as credential management, making their lives and our team's lives easier as well. We also found out that following this direction would allow us to greatly simplify our internal API landscape bringing the same integration benefits to our own teams, as they often consume each other's APIs. Their lives would also get easier. We also looked into employing uniform standards for new APIs. Our goal here was for our APIs to look the same, be modeled the same, and behave the same way. So if developers learn to work with one of them, working with the others should be just a piece of cake. We also decided to offer future API specifications, not in Word, not in PDF, but actually in the industry standard Open API format. This would make it easier for customers to consume our APIs and develop more with us, and even enable other wins, such as automatic generation of client SDKs, or enable consumption to programming languages we did not contemplate supporting. Creating all this documentation would not make sense without a good way to get this into the hands of our customers. And that is why we also wanted a centralized developer portal to fold in all this documentation that developers needed to develop, to build, develop, create new things with our APIs. We wanted to make this available in a central location that was easy to access and would enable them to experiment with our APIs in a sandbox environment or even in production if they were authorized to do so. Finally, we wanted an API gateway to be the central point for customers to consume all of our APIs and a central point that would identify and validate their calls to our identity providers. This would help our teams to operate our APIs and would provide the quality of service features I spoke before, throttling, rate limiting, caching, and also easily collect insights of what was exactly happening with all of these APIs. Ideally, all these components should also work as a single platform, should work together. And as this is a conference, you can imagine what was the solution that we selected to establish our foundation. We selected Connect to power our new API landscape, as it was a good fit for existing ecosystem, and also leveraged a lot of our existing team knowledge on top of the other features they also deliver. And for the parts that did not fit our ecosystem well, the Conk team was with us when every step of the way, helping to remove blockers and even building the things that we needed. By the way, did I mention that in this stage, you do need an internal customer? Do not go the ivory tower route and build what you think people will need. Build something in the open. Pair with someone trying to use it. This will help to validate your thinking, so you can get the right foundation in place and avoid wasting effort building things that will simply go unused. Do not bulldoze your way through this alone. For example, early in the process, we found out that our data team wanted to build a new API from scratch, and we paired with them to do just that. We absolutely did not start with the final version of our foundation, and they went with us hand in hand along the way, sometimes singing and dancing, sometimes kicking and screaming, but thanks to this partnership, we were able to find many holes in our API experience and where we needed to have something better. And they benefit from this as well, from not having to worry about how to get their documents online, not having to worry how to get their APIs in the hand of the customer, not having to worry about how they would protect them, or if they would have to build a bespoke authentication and authorization mechanism for this API. They got all of this from day one. And this also had the very benign side effect of getting us closer to the external customers that would be using this API. This helped us to find out more about who they are, how they wanted to use the dev portal, how they expected to use not only this API, but other APIs the SeatGeek plan to offer to them. Another big, red, important one. When assembling your foundation, absolutely resist the urge to build these components from scratch. Stand on the shoulders of others. This can be sometimes hard to hear, but your requirements, they are not as unique as you think they are. If your teams are eager to build, they should absolutely not fear. there will be a good level of customization necessary with any solution, even with the one that is right for you. And building upon something existing was what gave us speed to establish our own foundation. Which brings us back to our journey as we enter into convergence. This is the stage where we are right now into the SeatGeek API journey. This is the stage where our development teams start to make use of our foundational bits, and they start adopting our tools and standards to evolve this API surface we present to customers. We entered this stage with a work foundation that was validated by an actual internal customer case. Then we started to bring new teams and new traffic into the setup. So be prepared to advertise and build excitement for your API efforts. Our documentation also started to bring new teams into the setup organically. And when we get to this point, it's very important that all net new API development is also done on top of it, so you can avoid growing your architecture to directions that you no longer want to. You also need to anticipate that you'll see things that you did not see before, no matter how well you prepare for it. For example, when organic adoption started, teams saw our documentation, they got interested, they wanted to join the party. And we realized that onboarding into our new API management process was not as self-service as we believe it was. There were still a couple points where teams needed some training wheels, or they need to engage with us to move along in the process. Some of these were very early day items that got left behind as the internal customer was already in. But this gave us the chance to improve what we had and also to show teams that their feedback was heard, that they were part in building this platform that was being created to make their lives easier. And that worked very well. And some of our teams, they even proactively improve both our documentation and our software, which was super cool. Others start to explore different functionality from Kong that we did not initially saw any usage. There was no forecast, there was no expectation, and this was such a cool thing just in doing that. The next stage in the journey, evolution. This one comes after our teams no longer have to worry about redefining or reinventing common bits of API management and operation. It's also the stage that comes when they are able to focus on the business and really enhance our actual API products themselves. With our building blocks in place, we expect success in shifting more of our teams towards an API-first approach, where you begin with the API contract and you iterate over it with customers before building any of the code behind it. Ultimately, we believe that this will enable faster innovation and faster value creation. API first is a changing culture. It's a people change. By reducing friction, we make it easier for our teams to invent and operate these inventions, which results in a much more delightful experiences that we are delivering to our customers and fans. By working with our teams, by involving them in our work, we build trust so they know that they can count on us to help them create better API products. And only when all the boring but essential stuff is out of the way is when this all will start. But if you're trying to do the same thing as we did, how to evaluate the success of your effort to improve your API landscape? Can you use failure rate as a gauge for the simplicity of your APIs and the quality of your documentation? For the quality of the product you're developing? How quickly can customers start sending requests so you can find out how easy it is for them to integrate with your systems? How much traffic is actually going to your foundational bases so you can understand the growth of your business? These are all points that you should plan to measure as you move forward with your work, so you can start with a baseline and then have the hard data to back the effectiveness of this effort. And of course, I'd like to get back to where we are in the story now. It was a long journey to get here, but we're reaping the benefits of it. We're seeing adoption growing. We're also seeing something new, which teams taking advantage of our self-service setup to create brand new APIs, which you might remember from the beginning was not happening before. Autonomy is a thing when people have the freedom to experiment without having to bug someone to do something for them or to clean up something for them. When they feel that their little test will not create work for others, the friction for experimentation goes away. And this is what lets the imagination fly. This is an open door for innovation. And this helps your business to move faster and grow faster. And speaking of growth, we are also processing more than 86 million requests in production per month. And we are well set to migrate more of our existing APIs to the setup with Kong. In fact, this number is growing so fast that this number it was many times lower last week. But in the time between flying to San Francisco and updating this slide, we migrated half of the production traffic from one of our most used APIs. So we expect this number to keep growing. Which brings me to my hopeful forecast of what I expect to see at the end of this year. We are right now counting towards more than 9 public APIs. We used to use these numbers to manage our landscape, but honestly, it's becoming so easier for us to map APIs in a more fine-grained way that we don't believe the driving migration based on individual API products is going to keep making sense for us. API traffic is not uniform. Even within the same API product, there are critical areas and hotspots that need more attention. The setup we have now allows us to focus on these hotspots. It allows us to take care of these critical endpoints first, no matter which API product they belong to. With our previous setup, it was very rigid, the way we had to use to map traffic to our APIs. Our new setup with Kong makes it very easy to migrate traffic back and forth and experiment without fear. And thanks to that, we are in a good track to migrate our B2C and one of our largest B2B APIs into our new Kong setup in the next months. And to wrap it up, if there is one message that I want to leave, is that evolving an API landscape is a journey. There is no silver bullet. It will take time, and you need to be prepared for it. And even so, it is necessary. Most of us were trying to accomplish something and were being held back by our systems. SeatGeek felt this as we were trying to bring more life to fans. You might be trying to disrupt your industry. You might be looking for ways to be cost-effective. There are many things you might be looking for. And just like us, your own systems might be holding you back. And this makes change necessary. Companies that don't, they get left behind, plain and simple. But hopefully, some of what I showed you today will help you with the change that you need. So thanks for watching this session, and feel free to drop me a message if you want to discuss anything that was shared here in more depth. Also check out our developer blog if you're curious about other endeavors of SeatGeek Engineering, and visit our marketplace to see a first-hand account of what we built to our fans, and to get the ticket to that concert you always wanted to see. Thank you.